Good morning once again. So, we're going to try that again. I had a little frog in my throat, so I'm just knowing that that's what that pseudo-warm whatever was too, was just a frog in your throat. So, all right, here we go again, because it is a new year, right? So, good morning. Good morning. There we go. So let's say our focus statement with all the V's. Here we go. We embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love. Yes, that feels great. So happy New Year, happy 2020. We are beginning a new year, a new theme here at Centers for Spiritual Living. Some of you, I see, already have your spiritual living journals. Your 2020 spiritual living journals, yes. There, people are holding them up. There you go. All right. Perfect. Wow. Okay. There you go. So I had the distinct honor and pleasure and opportunity to be part of the committee that created the themes for 2020 for the entire organization of Centers for Spiritual Living. So it was a great opportunity to do that, and I think what we came up with and what we invited different participants to do and create is something truly wonderful this year. And so I'm very excited about the whole idea of what the theme is for this year. This year, simply the theme is 2020 Spiritual Vision. And when we think of 2020 and we think of vision, when we think of 2020, we have a tendency to think of vision, right? Like 2020 vision, right? And so if we have 2020 vision, then what we also have is we also have clarity, right? And we have harmony, and we have the ability to see past appearances or see through appearances, that we have an acuity, an astuteness, an awareness. Would you agree? That's kind of what that 2020 idea invokes. So that is the theme that we are going to be working with, the overall theme that we're going to be working with this year in 2020. The month theme, okay, I'm still here. The month theme is getting grounded, or back to basics. And getting grounded, we're not saying like, oh, you did something wrong, so now you're grounded for a week and, without TV or iPhone or iPad or, you can't go out with your friends or anything like that. Getting grounded is, once again, getting anchored back into basics, back into the truth, back into the fundamentals or the rudimentary teachings of what we teach here at Centers for Spiritual Living. And typically, the way that this has happened over the years is we refer to the Science of Mind and Spirit text that was written by Ernest Holmes, and we typically refer to the first 4 introductory chapters of that text. And the committee, when we got together, were like, that's great and all, but how many of you have heard those talks year after year after year after year? And how many of us have given those talks year after year after year after year? And there's nothing wrong with the rudimentary and the fundamentals, and it's always great to revisit the basics, yes? But what we wanted to do this time was we wanted to get into other chapters in the book that are just as fundamental to what it is that we teach, but that are not necessarily as explored as much as those first 4 chapters usually are. So this year, this week is chapter 1, the actual chapter 1, not the introductory chapter 1, the actual chapter 1, which is In the Beginning God. So that's going to be what we're going to be focusing on this morning. Sound good? All right. So here we go. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and all that was created of God, by speaking its word upon the waters. The waters is consciousness. That is what we know the waters to be. The Word itself is the self-knowingness of God, the self-awareness of God, knowing itself through itself as itself, and then it creates all. Good? All right? So what we know is that the Word itself was and is God. In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was God. So there was nothing else prior to God, but only God. Therefore, all of life, all of creation, everything that is created, all of creation itself is the divine made manifest, is the living embodiment, emanation, impartation, incarnation of one life. And there is nothing that God could have created from, because there's only this one thing, this oneness, this consciousness, that is coexistent with substance, that is coexistent with divine substance. So there's only this one thing that it could have created from, which is itself. Yes? So if there is only this one thing, this one mind, this one consciousness that needed something to be conscious of, then, and there's only this one substance, then everything has to be, logically has to be the divine. There is nothing, no one, no anything that is not the divine. Because there's only one power, one presence, one life, one love, one infinite eternal beingness that is the allness and the isness and the fullness of everything. So there can only be this one. And if there's only this one, then there's only one power. There cannot be two powers. If there were two powers, two coexistent eternal powers, then they would be in constant conflict with one another, because there is a power of two. There's a duality rather than a unity. And what we know is that when there is this word spoken upon the waters, that there are these thoughts, that these are individualized words, so then we get a multiplicity. But everything, so we get multiples, right? We get diversity, we get multiplicity. However, everything is still one. And so when God created, or this one created, and it created in and of itself, and it declared everything good and very good. So if everything is good and very good, then there can't be the opposite of good and very good, because it's all that there is good and very good. So here at Centers for Spiritual Living, we do not believe in the devil. We do not believe in the enemy. We do not believe in Satan. We do not believe in another power other than the one. And the one is God. The one is good. The one is love. So how could there be something opposed to that? Because if everything was created in and of and through and as this one substance, this one consciousness, then everything inherently has to be exactly like that, made in its image and likeness. So therefore, everything has to be good, everything has to be love, everything has to be the oneness. And by everything, I mean each one of us too, yes? That the who of who we are is the divine made manifest. That each one of us is the power and the presence of this one life, living, moving, breathing, and having its experience here. Got it so far? Yeah, right? Simple. It's the basics. So basically, God is all there is. Giati. I've shared that with you before. Giati. 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 God is all there is. And Tomorrow's busily writing in her journal, so I'm taking notes there. Right? God is all there is. So if God is all there is, then that is the who of who we are, then we are all that as well. That we too have self-agency, we too have self-will, we too have self-awareness and self-knowledge. Right? And so we too then can emulate the creative process, which you see behind. We can emulate that creative process of placing an idea into law, into that creative medium that knows how to create everything and receive form. That we are a microcosm of the macrocosm of the one life. And that is who we are and how we go about moving in the world. And so we have personal responsibility and we have personal agency over our own lives. We have self-agency over our own lives. It is not done to us, it is done through us. Well, there's silence on that one. Even the air conditioning kicked off on that one. It is not done to us, it's done through us. Right? That we too have a responsibility for our lives. We too have dominion over our lives. That we are one with the one, and so therefore we are co-creative in that aspect. With me so far? And yet, sometimes it feels like everything's happening to me. Right? Oh, it's happening to me. Ooh, it's happening to me. Right? Because what we live in, as we were talking about this morning at the morning table, we live in this construct or in this framework of an externalized God. We lived in this contract, in this framework that we have been taught and that has been handed down to us over the ages, that God is external to us, that it is somewhere out there external to us, that it is making its way and doing its thing and it's capricious and, you be good and you receive good, you be bad, you get bad, or you be good and you receive bad because, the good guys never finish first, right? That it's this capricious, arbitrary thing that is just willy-nilly going, you, okay, you, right? That it's this externalized thing, that it's almost like Santa Claus. He knows when you've been sleeping, he knows when you're awake, knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake, right? And even Santa Claus wasn't an old white dude. St. Nicholas was from Turkey. Hello. Gosh. So we, as a culture and over the years, have accepted this God that is external to us, that is always watching. Well, yes, we believe in a God that's omniscient, all-knowing. We believe in a God that's omnipotent, all-powerful. Right? We believe in a God that's omnipresent, everywhere, always. But that does not mean that this omniscient, omnipotent omnipresence is sitting there in judgment going, I don't know about that one. Because if it's truly omniscient, if God is truly omniscient, God already knows what you're doing. God already knows what you have need of. God already knows. And so God doesn't need then to create and wreak havoc in your life for you then to figure something out. It already knows what you have need of. It's not going to punish you. If you have kids, you love them unconditionally, hopefully. Right? You don't look and go, oh, this kid, that kid, yeah. Though from what I understand from parents in the room, that is not always the case. There are days, but underlying, at the root of everything, there is a deep love, right? So why would it be any different? Why would it be any different? What we have accepted in our society, or what we have been taught, what we have been indoctrinated, what we have been steeped in and stewed in, is this idea of this external God, this idea of this anthropomorphized God, this God made in, that humans are made in its image and likeness. So if we're made in its image and likeness, then it must look like I do. Right? We've been taught that God is a white dude sitting on a cloud, pointing fingers. That's what we've been taught. That's how we've been indoctrinated. That's what we've come to believe as a society. But what we teach here is that God is not external to us, that it is not some outside being. It is not some creature sitting somewhere in the cosmos with a giant spyglass, right? It is not that what we teach here is that, and what we know here is that the divine resides within each one of us, that it is a universal presence, it is a universal power, it is a universal energy, if you will, and even energy is form, and so it is both form and formless, that it is a consciousness. We frequently refer to it as Christ consciousness or a Buddha consciousness, but it is a consciousness. It is, for some folks, the universe. Right? The universe is this massive expanse of light, of love. Nowhere in that picture looks like Reverend Jeffrey. Right? That each one of us is this individualized incarnation of this light and this love and this life. How beautiful is that? And you can't tell me that your puppy dog at home is not God, because dog spelled backwards is God, right? But it's a presence of love, right? It's a presence of light. It's the presence of this all-knowing, infinite, eternal, absolute love intelligence. It is a divine wisdom. And it is abundant. It is never withholding anything. It is source. It is supply. And all these things that we say God is, all these labels that we give God, even the labels that we apply here of the God qualities that we apply here, are still concepts of what God is. It's not really capturing what God is. Because God is the ineffable. Ineffable meaning you can't even talk about it. What we can talk about is we can talk about the idea of it. We can talk about the concept of it. But truly the divine can only be experienced. Can only be experienced. And me trying to tell you about my experience of the divine already defines it, already narrows it, and already isn't what is. Mystic Joel Goldsmith talks about it like this. The only thing we can know about God is God is. And again, I'm not talking about the Santa Claus God. I'm not talking about the external God. I'm talking about the divine that is the indwelling presence that is both immanent in the world and transcendent beyond the world, beyond the universe. So it is both in creation and beyond creation itself. So it is, in more theological terms, panentheistic. It's a both and. Because if God is all that there is, then it's a both and. Both in, within, and beyond. So what we can know is that God is. God is. It's as simple as that. God is. And the only way to know more than that is to turn within. and to meditate and contemplate the isness. And allow that divine wisdom that is within you, that love intelligence that is within you, to reveal to you personally what God is. And for you to experience it for yourself. The rest of us are just way showers. We're walking each other home, as Ram Dass said. Right? We're just here walking with each other, accompanying one another in our own divine unfoldment, in our own personal experience of the divine. And spiritual awakening then happens when we turn within first and we come into alignment first with that isness. And then we begin to live it out into the world. We begin to share it. We begin to experience it. We begin to see largely with greater eyes, with the inner eye, but with greater eyes. And to begin to see the truth that is. Because the ultimate truth that is God is. That's the spiritual truth. God is. So when we look out into the world and we see the news that Australia is burning, when we see the news that the United States has attacked in the Middle East and killed an Iranian general, when we receive health diagnoses, when we look at our bank account, when we look at lack of job or lack of employment or what have you, when we look at these things, we can choose to see them in a multitude of ways. We can look at them and see them there and see this see the material world through material eyes. And we can try to find a material solution to the material problems that we are seeing, that we are viewing. But what we also know is that no problem was ever solved with the level of consciousness that created it. So if we are looking for a material answer to a material problem, that material answer to that material problem is still only temporary because the world itself, the material itself, is temporary. All this comes to pass. However, when we begin to, where it's not about turning away from and ignoring or trying to gloss over or spiritually bypass what we're seeing in the world, okay? Because just not paying attention doesn't help. Ignoring it doesn't help. Trying to say, it's all good, it's all God, doesn't help. Right? Doesn't change anything. Makes you feel good for a minute, maybe. But it doesn't change anything. What changes things is when you go within and you sit in contemplation and you contemplate the isness. You contemplate God is. You sit and you commune with the divine of your understanding. Seek first the kingdom, not the kingdom, the kingdom of God. The relationship, the awareness of your oneness. Seek first that, and then all things are added. So if I am facing something or I'm seeing something in my own life or in the world, it's not about saying, no, 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 that doesn't exist, or or trying to figure out, well, what in my consciousness last year or last month or, earlier today created this, right? Kind of like, what is it, the credit card, Capital One, what's in your wallet, what's in your consciousness, right? You can do that, but why? When you can sit and contemplate God is. And when you have the realization of God is, harmony, peace, joy, love, abundance, all those things are naturally out picturing, they are naturally occurring because they were already given in the beginning. It is only our small, limited thinking, it is only our belief in two powers rather than one power that prevents us from experiencing the fullness of health, experiencing the fullness of life, experiencing the fullness of love, experiencing the fullness of a full bank account. Because we've believed in two powers. We've given something else power. We've said that diagnosis has power over me. My zero bank account has power over me. I don't have enough to be able to do what I want to do. That has power over me. My job has power over me. My relationship has power over me. And what we've done then is we've shifted our idea from having a belief and an understanding of one power to a belief in two powers. A belief in another power, a belief in a power other than the divine, a belief other than the power of God. And that's where the idolatry comes in. Thou shalt have no gods before me, except that when we start believing in the bank account or the diagnosis. Or the fires. Or the idea of retaliation. So we have the opportunity, one, to do this first and foremost for ourselves, but then also when we are out in the world, Joel Goldsmith says this, and I love my new toy. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it. Because it's so much fun, because, I can just do this from here. So Joel says this. The question arises, do I know enough to be able to help the situation? I'm speaking only to those students who have had the experience of witnessing the errors and discords in the world and then being puzzled by what to do about it. And that is the beginning of spiritual awakening. Until then, no matter how much a person is seeking truth, there is no spiritual awakening because the individual is only seeking a solution to his own problems. From the moment that the student becomes concerned about what he sees on the street or what he reads in the papers and wants to know what to do about it, at that moment, real spiritual progress begins. It is wise at that point to try to specifically do something about the errors which you become aware, but it is important to remember that you are not to do anything outwardly, but you have something silently to do within your own consciousness. It might be compared to the experience of walking through a school building and seeing on the blackboard 2 times 2 equals 5, or 9 times 9 equals 67. You would have no right to walk into that classroom and change the figures on the blackboard. But you would find it impossible to pass by without inwardly making the corrections. Within yourself, you correct the mathematical error. Within yourself, you substitute the correct figures. From that moment, you become consciously aware of the mistake or disease or lack or limitation or man's inhumanity to man. You are called upon to make the adjustment within yourself. You are called upon to correct the appearances. So it's very simple. 2 times 2 is 4. Yes? It's a simple truth. Yes? Simple to understand, simple to know, yes? So when we look at what's going on in the world, in the larger world, we are called to know 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. We're called to know truth. And what is that truth? God is. So in the beginning, God. Every moment of every day, every breath is a new moment, every breath is a new beginning. Every breath is a new opportunity to simply know God is. And so it is.